Springfield's Talk 104.1. Good Tuesday morning. My name is Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. We've got a first responders breakfast this Friday at Scramblers. The Friday Road Show sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. And if you are a first responder, join us 6A to 9A this Friday at Scramblers. Free breakfast for you thanks to Barker's Frame and Collision and our good friends at Pyramid Roofing. Yesterday, of course, the big solar eclipse day. We've got audio, a reporter from the Weather Channel absolutely losing her mind on air. It's almost uncomfortable to listen to. And also on The View, the brilliant minds there that are served up by ABC as a news show discussing the eclipse and how it could very well be quite possibly the result of climate change. Well, of course, along with the recent earthquake in New York and New Jersey. How is it that you have these outlets that are fact checkers, fact check the Babylon Bee, which is a satirical site, but they don't fact check The View? It could very well be because they would have to actually expand their workforce. I mean, it's almost as if ABC News wants to stereotype women as just flat out stupid because they collectively take these women and put them on television for the world to see every single day, and they're morons. Complete and total morons. If I were a woman, I believe that I would start a change.org effort in order to get those women taken off of television and put just, you don't even have to be smart necessarily, but not completely stupid. Wilder RV, wilderrv.com. If you have thought about the world of RVing in the past but thought you couldn't afford it, you may be surprised. I recommend that you look at their site. Now, Wilder RV, fantastic people, incredible amount of inventory, new RVs, and it's just a drive north, a little over an hour on 13 to Clinton, Missouri. For the price of a hotel room or two per month, you can easily instead be making a monthly payment on a brand new RV that accommodates an entire family. Now, some of you who have purchased RVs in the past, you may know this. But there are many of you that look at it and you think, well, that's way beyond my price range. You may be surprised how easily affordable it can be and what joy you can get from it. Definitely. Even if you decide to check out, maybe you're looking at some used ones locally here, you're on Facebook Marketplace, do yourself a favor and make the drive north to Clinton, Missouri, Wilder RV. You can find them at wilderrv.com. I suspect most people, I wonder if I'm sure there's some of you that were just stubborn, and because of all the hype, you refused. You refused to participate in the observation of the solar eclipse. I just know there are people out there like that. There's actually going to be one. Did you know there's going to be another one next year? It's just going to be like in Chile and that there
I
other
did
parts.
know that because there was a post circulating on social media about what to do with your solar eclipse glasses now that the solar eclipse is over, and they were saying that you can send them off, and they're going to send them to children in Latin America so they can view it.
They can get their own glasses.
Right?
I'm not going to send my glasses down there. Get your own. I'm going to use mine just to look at the sun on any given day.
There you go.
I mean, they are the ultimate sunglasses. You don't have to get rid of them just because we're no longer going to be, at least for a couple of decades, in the path of the eclipse. You can still use them to look at the sun. Everyone else has gotten rid of theirs. You know, like, look what I can do. You can't. You know, showboat it just a little bit if you so desire to do so. So so you can donate those if you like. Or for people that are really, really, really into, maybe you were really, really into the eclipse, I suppose, you could fly to some of these South American countries and just, keep your glasses, and then you'll have them. You won't have to go down there and then try to find the ones that have been donated by Americans. You can just keep your own. I'm going to play some audio for you coming up after we get the latest news update. Weather Channel reporter comes unglued. the woman must be under the age of 40. I think that there is just something generationally. She may even be under the age of 30. I don't know who this person is. Don't follow the Weather Channel to where I know the reporters. I just know that there is a story Daily Caller, and this has been going around just because of her unhinged reaction to it. And you would really think when you listen to her that maybe is it the end of time? Because this is, a lot of people thought it was the end of time, which, by the way, not to get too off the beaten path here, but I heard oftentimes people refer to other people who believe that this was the end times as conspiracy theorists. That's not a conspiracy theory. I find that this, like so many other terms, is just used to label things that it's just like something that you don't believe in, you don't like, somebody you don't like, or if you think somebody has kind of a kooky belief, you just slap conspiracy theory on it. Not you, but this is what we do and say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. Believing that the eclipse was somehow a signal to the end times is not a conspiracy theory. It may be wrong. It may be lunacy. I don't know. I never honestly sat down and listened to anyone who believe. I know that there are those people out there. I never sat and had a conversation and had somebody explain to me, well, here's why I believe this, because of this, because of that, and so forth. So I can't fairly say that they have absolutely no reason to believe it. I don't know. Didn't take the time to entertain the notion. But I do know it's not a conspiracy theory. I think we just perhaps begin putting a little stock into the English language once again, having just a degree of respect for it, where the words actually mean what they mean. And again, I know most of you right now, you already do this, and you suffer the same sort of aggravation I do at just this decision to make words mean whatever you want. Boy, girl, secure, conspiracy theory. Right now, the latest news update. The first alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. 50% chance of scattered showers throughout the day today. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, a high near 70. 53 tonight. 70% chance of rain throughout the day tomorrow. Cloudy, cooler, 62 for a high, and sunshine on Thursday with a high of 63. Streaming live, KSGF.com. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447-KSGF. And welcome to the show. Of course, there was a great deal of coverage yesterday of the eclipse, and in the immediate listening area here, it was, what was it, like 97%
Yeah, it
or
was
something?
97.
Is that what it was? Which is still a remarkable amount of light, I would say. I mean, clearly you can tell, and it became noticeably darker, but the fact that only 3% of the sun was viewable as much light as there was, I thought, well, it still gives off a lot of light. The Weather Channel, I think this was in the Dallas area. Of course, they, I'm sure, had reporters at numerous spots where people had gathered in order to watch the eclipse as it happens. And this was the moment of full eclipse as covered by the Weather Channel yesterday. Now, just so there's no confusion, yes, that was the Weather Channel reporter that was doing all the screaming, like the hysterical. There's
She's really into
I
it.
know there was the cheering, like yeah, and then there was her. Oh my God, is that? And what's funny? I don't know if it's funny or not. Listen, I know some people completely dismiss it and say I don't get it. Well, I get it. It doesn't happen that often. You're talking about these massive things in the space, and so I do think that it's something that it's not unreasonable for a human to have a reaction. But at the same time, you know what to expect. She almost acts as if it was uncertain as to whether or not it was going to happen. It's the scene in The Office where they're watching the little DVD screensaver bounce around, and they're waiting for it to hit the corner, and then it finally does. They didn't know if it ever would, and that seemed to be her reaction. Someone had texted in on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line regarding those who felt that perhaps it was the end of time as we knew it. I'm kind of bummed, to be honest. I woke up today and still had bills to pay. I've long felt that an asteroid hitting the planet or some sort of massively catastrophic event that takes out not just you but everyone you know is the absolute way to go. I don't know why people fear this. To me, I hope that's the way it happens for me. And I know that may sound horrible because then, well, but then all these other people die. Well, here's the news flash. We're all going to anyhow. I mean, this is not a matter of if. It's a matter of when. And you think about the hassle involved with somebody dying that you are related to, somebody that you're responsible for. I mean, I just even think about passwords and things. I one day made up a spreadsheet. Think of all of the different bills that I pay. I'm responsible for all the different sites that you got to have access to with subscriptions, whether it's streaming stuff or bank accounts or loans, and bam, you're gone. And then just, you've got your spouse or your kids, and they don't even know what is out there in many cases. Like, in order to, you got this bill, that bill hasn't been paid up, and just the absolute hassle, the stress of it. And then if if it's unexpected, you have property left behind, and maybe you got kids or family and they're fighting over things, and just all that hassle. None of that. You worry about none of that if you're all cleaned out in one fell swoop. You don't have family members, feeling guilty about going on the cheap when it comes to a coffin. Just try. They're trying to. They weren't expecting it, and everybody right now with Bidenomics, it's hard anyway, and got to pay for a funeral and the cost of that sort of thing. None of that. This is just everyone at once. To me, and I genuinely genuinely mean this. I'm not trying to be humorous or sarcastic. To me, if I had people like, oh, if you got to choose, that would be the way I would choose. Over on The View, regarding the eclipse and the recent earthquakes, and then, of course, the cicada situation, and there's this cycle with cicadas in which every so many years you've got a couple of different kinds that line up, and they emerge. I believe it's every 17 years, but then you've got this scenario where you've got these different types of cicadas, and it's almost like an eclipse where they just happen to emerge at the same time, and so it's supposed to be even more profound. Though I believe this part of the state, we aren't necessarily going to experience that, but there are some parts of the country that are, and they were having that discussion on The View.
Makeup artist, when the earthquake was happening, she put her coat on and she was like, Jesus is coming.
I'm out.
I'm out. I'm leaving. We've got a solar eclipse. We've got the earthquake. She ran down the hallway.
The rapture is here.
The rapture's here. And then also I learned that cicadas are coming.
Cicadas.
For the first time in like
No.
100 years. Two different. Well, this is what I read.
There's two different kinds of cicadas.
Yes, two different times are coming.
The good cicadas, the bad cicadas.
For the first time in many, many years.
No, every 17 years this happens.
That's not what I read, but maybe you know better. But
in a way,
all those things together would maybe lead one to believe that either climate change exists,
That's
or something is
returning. It's not at the mercy of climate change. It's on they can't.
You're in a bad way when Joy Behar is having to point out to you, okay, listen, earthquakes are underground. That doesn't have anything to do with climate change. The cicada thing, nothing to do with climate change. The earthquake, nothing to do with the eclipse. If I watch The Five at times, and this is on Fox, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's the one news program that I can stand to watch because for a number of different reasons. I've talked about this before. And whenever there's a subject that they're going to talk about, they do, if they aren't informed on it, they do some research. And in fact, they'll even at times reference, well, I didn't, when I was researching this, I didn't come across that, or when I was researching this, I learned this. And some may say, well, it's unfair to compare The Five with The View because The Five is on a news channel. But ABC News lists The View as news programming. They present that as an information platform in which they talk about the news in the day. This is so that is their version of The Five, if you will. This is their product, a panel of individuals that are talking about something so that you can be better informed of it. Yet you can hear, these are people who not only do not do any research whatsoever on the subject matter in which they speak, but they don't even have the very basic elementary understanding of some of the subject matter. It is genuinely as if they deliberately found some of the stupidest women that they could possibly find to put on that show. How it is that there is not some sort of movement amongst women in this country demanding that they put at least halfway intelligent women on that show. Because if you don't know any better, whether you're from another planet or maybe you're from another country, and you already perhaps have stereotypes of Americans in your mind, and you watch a program like that, can you imagine what you think about women in the United States of America? Like here is a show that is a highly rated show that is on one of the major networks, and here they had their pick of women throughout this country to put on that panel. It is a news program, so presumably you're going to find individuals that you feel are the best and the brightest amongst the female gender, and this is what the United States of America has to offer. They sit around talking about how it's got to be climate change. I mean, you got cicadas, and you got the eclipse and this earthquake occurring. And no embarrassment. They're not humiliated. What a horrifically shameful snapshot of culture in the United States of America today, The View is. And the decision, it's not, listen, no matter what the intellectual standard is for any culture, you're always going to have idiots. That's just life. But the fact that in our culture today, that is what is put up as an information source worthy of viewing. One of the three major networks using the public airwaves. In their assessment, the best and brightest women are represented by those individuals. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Coming up this Saturday, the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds E-Plex. It will be the call to action, Christian County Republican Central Committee, Ozarks Conservative Convention. Chris Ann Hall, William Federer, Robert Brown, and you can win a pair of tickets for the event by texting the word WIN to the Pyramid Roofing Talk and Text line. That's WIN, W-I-N. Just text that word. No explanation point, none of that stuff. Just W-I-N to 447-KSGF for your chance to win a pair of tickets. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. 50% chance of scattered showers throughout the day today. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, high near 70. 53 tonight. 70% chance of rain throughout the day tomorrow. Cloudy, high near 62. Thursday, mostly sunny with a high near 63. We've got a First Responders Breakfast Friday. The Friday Road Show at Scrambler, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. And if you are a first responder and you join us between 6A and 3A, you are going to get free breakfast thanks to Scramblers, Barker's Frame and Collision, and Pyramid Roofing Company. Do you know what there was a spike in search for in Google yesterday? My eyes hurt.
Oh, well, that would make sense.
Yeah, Google search for my eyes hurt skyrocket after idiots stare into eclipse. It's a Daily Caller story. Google searches for the term my eyes hurt skyrocketed Monday afternoon as a solar eclipse swept across the United States, according to data from Google Trends. Despite numerous warnings from scientists not to look directly at the sun during the eclipse because, it could permanently damage your retinas. Apparently, many Americans did not heed the advice and immediately took to Google to figure out what was going on. It's one thing to, I guess, I don't know. Maybe you assume, well, if I just look at it quickly, or they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, it's not the approach that I would take, but there's certain things that just kind of make sense. But what kills me is after you look at it, and then your eyes hurt, having to go to Google in order to figure out why. That's the part. You can't figure that. You can't put two and two together. You know the warnings are out there. You have to know. You just have to know you're not supposed to look at the sun, right? I mean, you would think that you would know this. You decide to do it anyway, probably thinking, well, maybe if I just look through my fingers, or I just look real fast, or maybe you just can't help yourself. There is that instinct. I think guys more than girls have that instinct. There's just, you're not going to do it, but there's something, you even think to yourself, why do I feel compelled to look at it? On a normal day, I do not feel compelled to look at the sun. Today, however, I feel compelled. And it's probably because of all the warnings not to do it. But then you do it, and then you've got some eyesight problems. Your eyes hurt, and you're like, I wonder what that could be about. That's a weird coincidence. I'd better Google this and find out what's going on. So searches for my eyes hurt skyrocket. In the category of stupidity, one of the fabulous trends in New York City that has become prevalent over the last several weeks are men that are going up and randomly punching women in the face because, hey, New York City. And then you have these women, this is just society today, that will film themselves after being clocked, and then they post it on social media. Like, hey, I got clocked, New York City. Salon Magazine, which is far left wing. Well, you know who they blame for this, right? Well, it's Donald Trump. Salon Magazine blaming the rise of random attacks on women in New York City on men who are supportive of Donald Trump, the MAGA movement. In a commentary written by Amanda Murcott, the writer starts out by explaining the recent phenomenon and noting that men of different races and ages are responsible. Men are punching random women on the streets of New York City. As usual with these kinds of diffuse and chaotic stories, there's much that is unknown, including how often this is happening, how many people are involved, or whether it's all coordinated. Women report being assaulted by men of different races and ages. Still, across the different stories, a couple similarities pop out. The alleged victims are mostly young and pretty, and most of them say that they were minding their own business when they were attacked. CNN reports that dozens of women have discussed being victims on social media and formally interviewed 6 of them. NBC News reported that there have been at least 3 arrests. CBS News reported that NYPD released images last week of a 4th man wanted for allegedly punching a woman in Union Square. Even reality TV star Bethany Franklin says she's been victimized. Marcotte of Salon Magazine goes on to claim that such appalling incidents were, quote, unleashed by Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. Well, of course it was. I mean, everyone knows that, right? I mean, you don't even need to write a story about this. I'm sure while walking down the street, minding their own business, a woman gets clocked. She's like, dadgum Donald Trump and his supporters. She writes in Salon, these stories resonate as well because the nation is having a moment of increasingly unhinged male fury at women for daring to have lives that are centered around something other than catering to a man's every whim. Unleashed by Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, there's an upswell of loud male entitlement shouting at us from every corner. Wasn't it James Carville that recently said the problem with the Democrat Party is too many whiny women in it? The piece goes on to claim the rise of MAGA is fueled by misogyny. But it's less a backlash than a tantrum, a rage explosion by men who want to restore their dominance but fear that this time women won't buckle to their bullying. This rash of men punching women in New York City captures this moment in a dark way. I'm not laughing because it's funny that women are getting randomly clocked, but the idea that it's Trump supporters that they're just gone so crazy. They're just like, you know what? Okay, first off, New York City, this is where we're going to do this. You ever notice that the places that Trump supporters were told are responsible for some of the most heinous crimes are areas of the country in which there are no Trump supporters? This was the first red flag with the Jussie Smollett story, where we were told that a couple of guys at 2 o'clock in the morning in downtown Chicago were walking around wearing Make America Great Again hats and decided to randomly beat up a black guy. Because, yeah, I mean, who isn't walking around Chicago 2 o'clock in the morning and you see MAGA hat wearing Trump supporters all over the place? I mean, it is a hotbed of Trump supporters. Proud ones at that. Because that's what a Trump supporter at 2 o'clock in the morning in Chicago would want to do. Like, I want to make sure everyone knows I'm a Trump supporter. And here, lo and behold, New York City. Another real hotbed of conservative values in which Trump supporters are so plentiful that they feel as if this is the one safe space that they can randomly punch women in the face because there are so many other Trump supporters around. They don't have to worry about getting in trouble. This is the delusion of the Democrat Party. This is how they truly are delusional. You think about what is required for them to believe some of what they believe. James Carville is out there claiming that if Donald Trump gets elected president, you will get arrested if you mail condoms to someone. I kid you not. And he says, I'm not kidding, mark my words, this day is going to come. He said that this is not a drill, that Donald Trump, if he's elected president, then it will be illegal for you to mail birth control, that police are going to be going through your mail, and that you will be jailed if you mail a condom to someone. Now, the reason people like James Carville say this stuff is because they know their base is filled with lunatics who believe anything you tell them. Whether it's the solar eclipse and earthquakes or global warming, or in New York City where you have young men, primarily of color, that are going up and clocking women in the face, that those are actually secretly Trump supporters, and that's why this is happening, because Trump supporters are so mad at women right now because women just won't do what they say. So the answer is, let's go to New York and just randomly punch women in the face. There is a true absolute true mental issue with some of these people. For a country that claims to care so much about mental illness, we are a country that takes what is so easily identifiable as people with mental illness, and instead of treating it or acknowledging it, we validate the mental illness as not being mental illness, as being perfectly rational. Whether it is paranoid individuals who believe that every single bad thing that occurs is some sort of Trump supporter initiated event, or, I'm a boy in a girl's body, or whatever it is. No wonder we have an increase in mental illness in this country, because we take people with clear mental illness and present them as not being mentally ill. It would be as if a person who is hearing voices and they go to get help for it, instead of working with them to, one, understand that they're just voices, they're in their head, they're not real people, this is not real, it's your mind that is doing this to you, and then trying to figure out a way to either live with that in a way that is manageable, or perhaps some way to eliminate the voices altogether. Instead, the approach being, oh yeah, those voices are real. Oh no, you have no problems at all. Those are really and in fact, we're going to require everyone around you to also acknowledge those voices. These people are given jobs. They're reporters. They're journalists. They're hysterical, paranoid individuals in which, no matter how absurd the assertion may be, it's always Trump's fault. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, from helping us buy a lot to build our house and our dream HOA to selling a house that we made so many great memories in. Emily was amazing to work with, start to finish. This was a 2+ year process, and Emily made it such an easy process. She knows the market inside and out, guides us through the entire process. Also, Emily, from another review, sold our house for us this spring. She arrived at the very first appointment on time with documentation, recommended pricing, and a marketing plan ready to go. It was as easy as pulling a trigger. We had a good offer the first day. She continued to navigate us through the rest of the process. She had people who fixed the items their inspector found, and to my surprise, were principled enough to advise the inspector that he was wrong on a couple. Emily could not be more personable or easier to talk to. If you want the best, that's who you want. I've used her. I used her for just a minimal amount of work. It was a home that we were interested in, and one of the great things about we weren't looking, but it popped up, and I thought, I'm just kind of curious. And she took the time, and knowing what it is that my family was looking for, was honest enough to say, now, I don't think that this is probably what you are looking for, even though we weren't looking. But, that's what you get. She's not just trying to sell you a house as quickly as possible. She wants to make sure you're in the right one. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Who remembers David Hogg? David Hogg was most recently, perhaps a year and a half ago or so, in the news because he was going to build a pillow empire for the sole purpose of taking down Mike Lindell and his company. And at the time, aside from any lack of knowledge of the industry or working at all on the part of David Hogg, I understood that when you start a business just for the sole purpose of getting someone else, you're probably not going to succeed. It's one of the secrets of being a success is to really love what you're doing. And whether that is a passion for the work itself, or maybe you just love to be successful, you're goal-oriented. But if your number one goal is, well, I hate that person and I want to drive them out of business, so I'm going to compete against them, odds are you're just not going to be able to do it. And, he was posting things at the time like, hey, does anyone know a factory I can buy? It was laughable. It was laughable. So that ended up being something he abandoned. But what he was doing at the same time was he was involved in a political action committee. There is a story about said political action committee. Filings show that his left-wing Gen Z PAC blew more than $1 million on travel expenses, consultants, and actually spent very little on candidates. This is a common theme with left-wing activists and their fundraising efforts, be it Black Lives Matter, David Hogg, gun control activist Hogg living high on the hog, thanks to the many donors cutting checks to his political action committee, according to the FEC. Hogg created a group in the aftermath of the 2022 midterm elections called Leaders We Deserve. Its goal, as stated, is to elect Generation Z politicians to offices throughout the country. He created the PAC with Kevin Leda, the campaign manager for Representative Maxwell Frost, a Democrat from Florida, and a Generation Z Democrat elected in 2022. Hogg launched the group with great fanfare, telling NPR, because he's legit, that during former President Donald Trump's presidency, a social movement was born on the left. For every year of Trump presidency, I think there was a new chapter of a social movement that was born, whether it was the Women's March, March for Our Lives, the environmental movement, or the movement for Black Lives. Hogg touted the group's effort to elect young Democrat candidates, promising that Leaders We Deserve PAC would provide them with all the resources they needed to win races. We're trying to pick them and say, we would like to help you run for office. We'll supply you with all of the resources that you need and help coach you and hold your hand to get you there? Well, because David Hogg, of course, has the resume of successful campaign marketing. Since Hogg's group came into fruition, much of the few $1 million raised has actually gone not to electing candidates or executing its stated mission, but to luxurious expenses, such as travel bills, as well as political consultants and legal fees. In fact, the group in 2023 only spent on a handful of candidates, 4 to be exact. One of whom was already serving in U.S. Congress, Frost, and another who lost a race in a special election in Alabama. The vast majority of the group's money, the FEC filings from 2023 show, did not even go to helping candidates at all. Much of it went to other political consultants at various firms, as well as to Hogg, with a lavish travel budget to boot. Well, he fits in nicely where he is. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. We are on YouTube. You can watch the show live or past episodes if you'd like that. Sponsored by Springfield Wraps, the designer of the KSGF studio. We got a snapshot in of some news article, and I'm not sure what periodical it is because that part of it is cut off, but that's not really relevant. And it came in on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, and it was a story by an Andrew Parker, the 25 worst American cities you'd be wise to avoid. And, of course, it's got a picture of an angry-looking white guy with a Make America Great Again hat on it. And this, of course, is the marketing that we hear from the Democrat Party constantly and the media, that these are dangerous parts of the country. These are very worrisome parts of the country. They can say what they want. Where are people leaving and where are people going? Where are people leaving? Where are people going? People are leaving non-MAGA country, if we want to put it in that context. They are fleeing. and they're all going to MAGA country. That's called reality. News in 60 seconds. Springfield's Talk 104.1, partnering with Wonders of Wildlife, Dogwood Canyon, Ozark Mill at Finley Farms. Go to KSGF.com or the KSGF mobile app for your chance to win an amazing prize package from all of those folks. It's as easy as that. While you're there, you can also maybe find a new Fido friend to adopt. So many of those cute little pups at the Humane Society of Southwest Missouri. This is Nick and Cole's Fido Friends, brought to you by Nicole Brock, American Family Insurance, where every week we debut with the Humane Society of Southwest Missouri a video of a new dog and get those posted at KSGF.com. They're on the right-hand side if you scroll down just a bit. Homer was one of my favorites from last year. I've always liked girl dogs. I don't know why. I think growing up we just always had girl dogs, and Homer was a boy dog, but he was a cute one.
He was really cute. I have a feeling he's going to go pretty
He was ugly
fast.
cute.
Yes, he was.
I
He
talked
was
about
like
that
a
yesterday.
carrier, like hug.
There
I don't know,
was
there
a
was like
whole...
3 other dogs mixed in there, but he was really cute.
Sometimes dogs that are mixed, it's like a full mix. So every part of the dog is that mix. And then there are dogs where it looks as if it's a science experiment where the face is one type of dog, the legs are the other type of a dog. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of it being all melded together, it's like a flea market. And it's and it's like, okay, this booth here is pug, and this booth over here is Chihuahua, and this, I know it's Chihuahua, and this, and that's what he reminded me of. It's like, this looks like this was some experiment in which a pug dog's face was put on this over here, but he just, I don't know, he had a real cute personality, and if he hasn't been adopted yet, I do think he'd make a fantastic dog. All of those dogs that they bring us over at Nicole Brock's place on Kearney are just, they're fantastic little pups that need a home. I saw there was a news story about a dog, I don't know where it was, got adopted after 11 years in a shelter. I know, I'm like, that long, and no one at the shelter took it? I mean, I don't know, I just felt sad.
We were really talking Homer up, but he's already adopted.
Is he adopted?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, forget about that. We'll have another one tomorrow, though. We'll get that posted up. KSGF.com. Some good news for women and girls. An NCAA, alternate known as the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletes, has announced that men cannot compete against women in sports. The National Association of Intercollegiate Athletes, the governing body for mostly small colleges, announced the policy yesterday that all but bans transgender athletes from competing in women's sports. By the way, we need to clarify something here, because I see this erroneously in headlines all the time, and actually, I don't know that it is erroneous. I think sometimes it is made to mislead. And we see this anytime there is an issue with transgenderism and the attempt through law to make sure that boys are in competition with boys and girls are in competition with girls. And that are these headlines or the verbiage that says, bans transgender athletes from competing in women's sports. No, it does not. Now, it may ban a boy or a man who claims to be a woman. But if you are a woman and you claim to be a man and you're transgender, you can still play on the girls' team because you are biologically a female. These headlines are consistently very misleading. Anytime it's, transgenders banned from sport, trying to ban transgenders from competing against girls. No, it does not. It may ban, quote, transgender boys or transgender girls from competing in, the girls because they're actually boys. It just, what it ultimately does is treats everyone the same. If you have an XX chromosome, you're on this team over here. If you have an XY chromosome, you're on this team over here. It doesn't matter what your feelings are. That's not how these teams are broken up. It's not how bathrooms are broken up. It's not how showers are broken up. That's not how you get pregnant. Because of how you feel inside. It's because of biology, science. That's the whole reason, the whole purpose behind having the two separate teams because of one point in time we actually were interested in reality and science, and so universally this was not controversial. This was not extreme despite what the Democrats want you to believe. We all understood. Boys are boys and girls are girls. Simply because Democrats have decided to throw science out the window, that does not by default mean that people who still recognize science are extremists. I think we have to really start pushing back on these headlines, and I would recommend not being mean about it, but anytime you see a headline that claims transgender or some sort of law or effort or a decision made that bans transgenders from competing in women's sports, unless it really truly is a ban, anyone, boy or girl, who identifies as something other than what they are banned. I think we need to start contacting these news outlets and saying that's not an accurate headline. I actually, it was maybe a year and a half ago or so, there was a story, it was a news leader story, and the headline claimed that there was some legislation that would ban transgenders for something, and it was inaccurate. It wasn't banning, it was just treating transgenders like everyone else. XX chromosome, you're with XX chromosomes. XY chromosomes, you're with XY chromosomes. You're treated like everyone else, equality. And I sent an email to the person who wrote the story, and I said, am I missing something here? In your story, you claim that this legislation would ban transgenders from competing in sports, I think it was, on a high school level. I'm not seeing that anywhere. And to the credit of the person who wrote it, they changed the story. I frankly sometimes think that some of the journalists, they don't even know. They don't realize. They're being fed misinformation oftentimes. And you don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be sarcastic about it, because genuinely the indoctrination and the pull away from scientific fact has been so successful and so strong. I do believe oftentimes when these headlines are written, they really genuinely don't realize that they're writing inaccurate headlines. And so you can say, hey, listen, just so you know that this is not what's going on here. That may be the first time they've realized it. So this isn't the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletes is not banning transgender athletes from competing in women's sports. It's just banning men from competing in women's sports. According to the transgender participation policy, all athletes may participate in NAIA-sponsored male sports, but only athletes whose biological sex assigned at birth is female and who have not begun hormone therapy will be allowed to participate in women's sports. And that's something else that I think we need to push back on. No one is assigned a gender any more than you're assigned your weight, you're assigned your length, you're assigned the fact that you have 10 fingers and 10 toes. You just have it. If this was something that was just randomly assigned, how is it that since the beginning of time, when you had cultures, countries, societies to begin writing these things down, every single doctor, every single nurse, every single hospital, whoever put down male or female, they always coincidentally assigned the same gender to the same biological markers. In other words, XX chromosome always got one label, XY always got the other label. Just coincidentally? Was this a conspiracy? Or is it because, just like whenever a child, the weight is put down, the length is put down, the eye color is put down, the number of fingers and number of toes, if that's put down, it's put down. It's just because that's what it is. It's not being assigned. This is not a random assignment. This is definitely a step in the right direction. As a country, we are way behind the other advanced nations when it comes to the issues of transgenderism, as a lot of our European friends have begun to ban some of the very dark and macabre, twisted sex change operations that young kids are being lured into with the promise that it will fix their mental health issues. And over in England in particular, France, some of these other countries, they are beginning to recognize the horrific results of this, while here in the United States, you still have at least one political party that is insistent and doubling down on trying to do as much damage to as much kids as possible before the science catches up to them. In this instance, though, however, this is definitely a step in the right direction in protecting young girls and young women. Springfield's Talk 1041, the latest news update. First alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. 50% chance of scattered showers throughout the day. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, a high near 70. 53 tonight. 70% chance of rain through the day tomorrow. High of 62. Sunny. 63 Thursday. Streaming live, KSGF.com, also YouTube. That video audio stream sponsored by Springfield Wraps, designer of the KSGF studio. Donald Trump getting mixed reaction on his abortion position. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time talking about this. Frankly, I don't really like talking about this because abortion is one of those things. Like, I mean, there's good and there's evil. There's right and there's wrong. And in any society, you're going to have people that support evil things, for a number of different reasons. Sometimes because of convenience, sometimes because of hatred, sometimes because they're convinced it's virtuous. We've seen this in our very country, just culturally. Slavery, I would say, runs most parallel to the issue of abortion, culturally speaking, morally speaking, and just in terms of the arguments themselves, calling it property rights, or abortion is called choice. You give it sort of these benign terms that dehumanizes the victim of each of the crimes against humanity. Slaves were called property. It dehumanized them. Unborn babies are called fetuses or a choice in order to dehumanize them. The argument for slavery was, it's my property, I can do what I want to. Keep your hands off my property. Again, just sort of dehumanizing that human being. When it comes to abortion, keep your hands off my body. Dehumanizing, portraying that other separate autonomous body of a human being as if it's not one, but instead part of the mother's body. So the parallels are pretty dramatic. And at the same time, you just, unless someone really has been denied the knowledge, scientifically speaking, on the issue to where they don't realize that this is a living human being, then you don't really change people's minds intellectually. You just have to, the hearts and minds argument, and people who embrace evil and who just flat out believe you should be able to kill certain human beings if you want to. There are people who believe that it's morally all right to beat your wife, to have that superior command over your wife. And while that isn't as prevalent in our culture as it is in some, that's, people who believe that, until they just break away from that evil, that you're not going to change their mind on it. So, of course, therein lies the problem that the Republicans have right now, and that is, given that Democrats don't have anything else other than selling death, selling the ability to have such power over another human being that you should legally be able to kill them, and that's something that apparently is very, very, very attractive to a large segment of the population, and the Democrats see that as part of their base. And so they are trying to make an issue of this, which then forces Republicans to try to figure out, okay, what do we do? It's clear Donald Trump's position here is to essentially make it, attempt to make it a non-issue for his campaign. Say, hey, this should be a states issue. States issue, states' rights. And so when it comes to whether you vote for me or not, abortion should not be something that you take into consideration. From a political perspective, in terms of strategy, I understand that. Now, that conflicts with my moral belief because to me, well, it is. It's, once again, parallel to slavery. This was the argument that the South made, that it's a states' rights issues. And the other argument was, no, it's not. It's a humanity issue. Yes, states have rights, but not to just decide there's a segment of the population that people can randomly kill if they want to, or own if they want to. I happen to think it's almost less evil for somebody who is in denial of science and is for abortion because they don't believe it's a human. It's more evil to say, oh, yes, this is a human, it is killing, but we're going to let states decide whether or not the citizens have the right to kill other citizens that have absolutely no ability whatsoever to protect themselves. To me, that's a really dark hole. And that's the position of the Trump campaign. But again, I understand that position that's being made. And I also understand the argument that, listen, sometimes you have to strategically make an argument like that in order to get into office to make positive change. I understand all of this. The biggest problem that I have right now, and there's this spat going on between Lindsey Graham, you got Mike Pence out there saying that Donald Trump is just, spitting in the face of pro-lifers, to which, frankly, my reaction to that is Trump did more than Mike Pence or any other Republican did in terms of moving this country pro-life. So you can just sit down. I mean, listen, I understand and I completely am okay with having intellectual disagreements over these particular sort of issues, but when you have been part of a political party that has done nothing but year after year after year after year after year raise money saying, oh yes, vote for us, we'll make this a pro-life country, and then there is a guy that actually did it, and you say he is spitting in the face of pro-lifers, and again, I'm not even saying that's not the case, but it's just like, you know what, you can just sit down. Lindsey Graham wants a federal ban. Trump has talked about in the past. He's not this time for obvious campaign reasons. I get that. But the fighting, the problem is that the Democrats have managed to manipulate Republicans into fighting over this. And what the Republicans need to do is what the Republicans, because of two governors, managed to do when it came to illegal immigration and put the ball in the Democrats' court. That is what turned that entire issue around. They put the ball in the court of the Democrats. They made the Democrats start having to deal with an issue that they were supportive of. And exactly the way to finesse it, I'm not sure. But what Republicans need to figure out is a way to get the Democrats fighting over when they support banning abortion. Because as you know, they love to claim they don't support abortion up till birth. This is what they love to claim. No Democrat. Anytime a Republican makes that claim, you'll get the fact checker saying that's not true. Republicans need to kick the ball over to their court to where they are having to define where they support a ban on abortion. If it isn't abortion till birth, then when is it? Because right now, all of this fighting over it, there just really isn't any upside. And when it, I generally don't spend a lot of time discussing these. I don't know that you can get more pro-life than I am. And for people who just, aside from political reasons, this whole, well, it's a state issue, I'm like, the ability to kill people, what else should be a state issue? I mean, simply because the 10th Amendment, what about rape? Can rape be a state issue? Well, we'll let the states decide. I mean, if we're going to let the states decide as pro-life individuals something that is regarding death, then can we let them decide rape? Now, that is my box over here of the moral perspective, which I'm able to compartmentalize away from the political perspective and recognize and understand the realities of that as well. It's a messy thing. And what has occurred here is somewhat ironic and hopefully short-lived, is Trump's desire to move the abortion discussion out of his column by saying, hey, this is a state's issue. That way, in terms of the presidential campaign, there will not be the impact the Democrats are hoping that there will be. But in doing that, he has, of course, caused a lot of people like Lindsey Graham and others to start attacking him for it, which has lobbed it right back into his campaign. But again, hopefully that will be short-lived. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Friday, Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair sponsoring the Friday Road Show at Scramblers, and it is a first responders breakfast. If you're a first responder, come by between 6 a and 9 a at Scramblers and Barker's Frame and Collision, Pyramid Roofing Company, and Scramblers buying you breakfast. That's this Friday, 6 a to 9 a. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. 50% chance of scattered showers throughout the day, otherwise mostly cloudy, high near 70, 53 tonight. 70% chance of rain throughout the day tomorrow. 62 sunny, 63 on Thursday. A1 Custom Car Care pre-purchase inspection. This is not your safety inspection that when you get buy a vehicle, and if it's not new, you got to go get that inspection. It costs like $750 or whatever it is. State government mandated inspection. This is to make sure that you know exactly what it is you are purchasing. This is beyond. You're like, well, I do the Carfax or Carfox or whatever. Now this is well beyond that. This is getting in, taking things apart, putting them back together, checking out whether or not there's been any sort of water damage in your vehicle or anything that the seller, in all likelihood, doesn't even realize may be about to go wrong with the vehicle. I've utilized it. I've used it to make a pass on a vehicle that I was thinking about purchasing, and you can also use it in order to negotiate a lower price. They've got a sale price on it. You say, listen, I had A1 Custom Car Care check it out, and they said, I'm going to need to do this. We take $800 off of it. So you can use it to leverage a better price for yourself as well. In the end, it's about having the most information possible when it comes to a vehicle that you're about to purchase. A1 Custom Car Care. A question on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Are you saying that abortion is the job of the government? No, I'm not even sure I understand the question. Whoopi Goldberg says abortion isn't included in the 10 Commandments. It's you, your doctor, and God. Well, here's a question. Well, a few questions. If it's a woman's choice, why does a doctor have any say whatsoever? This is a contradicting claim that we oftentimes hear from the left. Number one, well, it's a woman's choice, but then they will also say it's between a woman and her doctor. So if a male doctor doesn't want to do it, are you okay with that? Because that's what between a woman and her doctor is, right? You are when you say this is a decision between a woman and her doctor, then you are saying that you have two individuals that are in that decision-making process. I don't and I don't know why the left even says that. It just seems to be a contradiction from their position that it's a woman's choice, and that no one should be able to tell a woman what to do. But then they will say it's between you and your doctor. Of course, the argument here that abortion isn't in the Ten Commandments, well, thou shalt not kill is. But aside from that, once again, neither is rape. Neither is child molestation. Neither is cutting someone's legs off. But that doesn't mean that it's a green light to do it. You know, I think that there are some intellectual arguments that can be put forth that I don't necessarily agree with when it comes to people saying, here's why abortion should be legal. But you got to hand it to some of these individuals. They come up with the dumbest ideas, some of the dumbest arguments. Well, it's not in the Ten Commandments. Okay. Lots of things aren't. You know, because there's only 10 of them. There's more than 10 things that I think we can all agree probably should be illegal. And why is it in Whoopi Goldberg, completely pro-life, between you, your doctor, and God? Why is God involved in that if it's not an issue of killing and right and wrong? See, that seems as if this is a nod to a recognition, a reality, that this is about killing your child. And that's why you're saying that's between you and God. Interesting acknowledgement there. Meanwhile, you have, and this is the hysteria, I think people like James Carville, they aren't as hysterical as they know that their voting base is, and so they use the hysterical nature of their voting base, and they play off of that. James Carville, not a drill, claiming that if Donald Trump is elected president, that the Supreme Court, for whatever reason, is going to ban mailing condoms and birth control. Because that's how these things work, right? Naturally. Now, the Daily Caller has a piece noting that Congress passed the Comstock Act in 1873, which bars mailing anything obscene, lewd, lascivious, including any drug or medicine, for the prevention of contraception or for causing an unlawful abortion. So Carville claims that for whatever reason, if Donald Trump is elected president, the Supreme Court is going to get together and they are going to require that the Comstock Act in 1873 be enforced, and that will mean that police will be going through your mail to see whether or not you're mailing condoms to someone. This is what he's saying. He said the law's on the books. They can enforce it. It's actually a law. They believe in textualism and originalism. You can't deviate from the language of the statute. And they're literally going to be knocking walls down. They're literally going to have surveillance of the internet, of your mail, of everything you can imagine. Abortion, forget abortion. Birth control, that's the first thing that's going to go. You're not going to be able to have condoms in interstate commerce. I promise you that, end quote. Now you are a thinking person that is, I don't know, you may not even be intelligent. And you recognize that that is just obscenely detached from anything that is realistic. And you and I hear it, and to some degree we believe that this works in the favor of truth because it is so absurd and so unhinged that people who may be on the fence in the issue, they're going to hear things like that and go, I don't think I can trust that side because they're saying things that are insane. But what we can't fail to realize is that there is a segment of the Democrat voting base who believes that stuff. They believe it. And they will spread that information. And the fact checkers, of course, won't do anything to diminish the success of the spreading of the disinformation. There won't be any news stories about these disinformation campaigns from the left because, of course, they want people to believe these things as well. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Quick Draw Gun in Monette. It is easy to watch the news sometimes and think about safety and security. And if that is something that has been on your mind here lately, I want to recommend Quick Draw Gun in Monette. They're very easy to find, just a straight shot down 60. It's definitely worth the drive down there. They are constantly adding new product lines to the shop. And if you're looking for something specific, Brad and his team, they're always happy to help. From handguns to accessories to concealed carry purses and home defense shotguns. They've got a little something for everyone. Plus, they also offer scope mounting, minor gunsmithing, and custom laser engraving and cerakoting services as well. I've used them to purchase my first ever firearm, and I've also taken advantage of that laser engraving service. Couldn't be happier with the customer service I've received, and I think you'll be pretty happy with their service as well. So whether you are looking to purchase your first ever firearm or you're looking to add to that firearm collection, Quick Draw Gun in Monette. You can find all of that contact information plus shop hours and address. All of that is going to be housed under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right, just want to read through a few of your text messages on that abortion issue and then move on. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447-KSGF1. Regarding Whoopi Goldberg saying that abortion isn't included in the 10 Commandments, there were 613 commandments, not just 10. The 10 Commandments were just the first 10. All the Israelites heard God say himself. Another asking, when has the left ever cared about the 10 Commandments? Well, this is something that the left loves to do. They really embrace Christianity when they think that they are using it to contradict conservatives. Anytime they think that they have such a distaste for Christianity and Christians, but if they believe that somehow they have cleverly figured out a way to use the word of God or Christian beliefs against Christians themselves, then they're preachers. They're absolute preachers. Regarding James Carville claiming that if Donald Trump gets elected president, the Supreme Court is going to make it illegal for you to mail birth control condoms and other things through the mail. These people have the audacity to call right-wingers conspiracy theorists. Yes, they do. They love to throw out the QAnon stuff, but then at the same time, that is the sort of insane disinformation that they love to spread. And finally, should the future of an unborn child be among the decisions of a mother, doctor, and father? Well, it depends on what you mean by future. If by future do you mean which bedroom they're going to have? What color is the paint going to be in their room? Are we going to have them in preschool? Are we going to homeschool them and not have them in public school? Are we going to start a college fund for them? Then yes. But if by the future of the unborn child mean should the father, mother, and doctor decide all to get together and kill the baby, I would say no. You do not have the right to do that. The human right to do that. But obviously a lot of people disagree with that, and that's what the Democrat Party is banking on. Police in the nation's capital are not stopping illegal aliens who are driving around without even bothering to put license plates on vehicles. This is how brazen they are, because they know they get a free pass. This is Wonderland for illegal immigrants. This is, or at least certain parts of the country. Democrats have put this giant open where come and just do what you want, and they know it. The Daily Signal interviewed numerous individuals who admitted to being in the U.S. illegally and working as food delivery drivers using motorbikes that do not have license plates indicating that the vehicles are not even insured or registered. D.C. law forces virtually every single type of motorized vehicle to be registered and to display a license plate, while the operator of the vehicle must be insured and possess a valid driver's license. The Daily Signal launched an investigation into the uptick of motorized bikes buzzing around D.C. without license plates and found that the D.C. police do not appear to be enforcing registration laws. Well, of course. Because those laws are only for law-abiding citizens. If you come into this country illegally, the Democrat Party is a pro-criminal party. I don't believe there's ever been a period of time where there has been such benefit to people who are violators of the law than there are at this point. I mean, it's just reward after reward after reward after reward. Unless you happen to be in a state like Florida or, Texas, where they clamp down on illegal behavior and they actually do enforce laws. I remember back couple decades ago, every so often you'd see a story pop up. It'd almost be this sort of little quirk of a story in a newspaper about how diplomats from other countries had diplomatic immunity in this country and they could park where they wanted to. They could run stoplights. They had diplomatic immunity, and so they could not be held accountable. They could break these laws, and they would not be held accountable. And these stories would, they would pop up, like I said, every so often. And there may, in any of these examples, been something that had occurred that caused a story to be written in which you had a diplomat that was, or their kids maybe were hoodlums and violating the laws, and then there was nothing could be done about it. And generally speaking, people would shake their heads and think, this is insane. This is ridiculous. How is it that, that somebody, just because they are a diplomat from another country and they have this diplomatic immunity, can violate our laws? And that was a period of time when it was at least isolated. I shouldn't say at least, but in terms of numbers, that it was isolated to, these sort of elite diplomats. And we were somewhat outraged as a culture at the time when we would hear these stories. And now it's just anyone who wants to come in this country gets treated that way. The sort of diplomatic immunity that a couple decades ago that was synonymous with these elite individuals that were from other countries. Now it's just anyone who comes into this country, you get illegal alien immunity. When I was back in 2012 in Ukraine, specifically the Crimean Peninsula, which was, you could literally see Russia from portions of the Crimean Peninsula. So that's how close it was. And Putin has since built a bridge to, since the invasion took place, so that Russians can just, drive back and forth. But prior to that, young Russians, and there are beautiful beaches there. I mean, it's just beautiful. Resort-type beaches and waters. Dolphins. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. And you would get Russians, young Russians, that would come over and just go absolutely crazy. And they would go crazy because of the relationship between Ukraine and Russia. The Ukrainians knew there was nothing they could do about it. They weren't going to be able to arrest these Russians, that any sort of citation they gave them, they would just go, they go back to Russia. So they would basically come over to the Crimean Peninsula through an area called Kerch of Ukraine because they knew that there were no rules that applied to them. They would drive crazy. Just hooping and hollering. It was like spring break. And it was because they knew that in that jurisdiction, they were free to do whatever they wanted. No one could hold them accountable for it. That's what the Democrats have created in this country with criminals, specifically illegal immigrants. And they know it, which is why they so brazenly violate these laws. But if you're a 72-year-old grandma that prays on January 6th outside the Capitol and has a friendly conversation with a police officer in the Capitol, a year in prison, $250,000 fine, because that's the justice system we have in this country today. Streaming live, KSGF.com, the KSGF app. We are on Spotify. Also, if you want to watch the program, YouTube, that's sponsored by Springfield Rabs. We have the on-demand section, KSGF.com. The KSGF app's very convenient. It gives you very easy access to what we have going on, the different contests that you can sign up for if you'd like to, get registered for Lunch Bunch at Retro Metro. Also, easily text in the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. There's just a little button there, and all you got to do is just tap on it, and then you don't have to remember the number in order to do that. Coming up also, there is the call to action. This is the 2024 Ozarks Conservative Convention that will be taking place this Saturday at the Ozark Empire Fairgrounds E-Plex. Speakers this year include Chris Ann Hall, William Federer, Robert Brown, and you can get a pair of tickets, or win, a chance to win a pair of tickets, by texting the word WIN to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. That's WIN to 417-447-KSGF. Another hour straight ahead, and a reminder right now that Friday is a first responders breakfast. If you are a first responder, come out and join us for free breakfast. That is thanks to Pyramid Roofing Company and Barker's Frame and Collision, and of course Scramblers. So that would be this Friday for first responders, 6A to 9A News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Just the News has a piece regarding this story of a ATF raid that took place a couple of weeks ago in Arkansas. It was a local airport administrator, and they shoot him dead in his home. And there are new questions that are swirling around the entire case, and some of this is being fueled by the apparent refusal of ATF agents to turn over body-worn cameras, body cams, they call them BWCs. And just the charges themselves and the fact that they, at the early morning hours, went in with guns drawn, no knock, just, stormed the home for something that even if he were convicted of, a maximum of 6 months in jail. And so there are a lot of questions. I think also the fact that this is Arkansas. Those of you in Arkansas, I just don't trust all y'alls when it comes to a lot of this stuff. It is, and for me, it goes all the way back to Mena, Arkansas. And we talked a couple of years ago. There was this case, and there was some connection, I think, to the Clintons maybe, but there was a guy who was tied to a tree and shot, and it was ruled as suicide. It was somebody that was an attorney, or it was a person that was, I don't know if influential is the right word, but they were in the circles, okay? This wasn't just some random individual. And I forget it was somebody who had connection with relatively high-profile individuals. But yeah, the guy was tied to a tree. The shotgun, I think, was in his truck. And he had been shot with that shotgun, and it was ruled as suicide. I mean, clearly. It could not have been more obvious that it wasn't a suicide. But that's just the way that it was. And you hear these stories down in Arkansas, and I think sometimes people, they're like, well, but Sarah, I could be Sanders as governor. That stuff wouldn't happen. It doesn't matter. You could put somebody pure as the driven snow in the governor's mansion, but that does not take away all the corruption. I mean, look, Trump got elected president, and look still what was going on. And, of course, you're talking about ATF here as well. But I'll share with you some of the story and the circumstances that, at the very least, I think that reasonable people would say that this is another instance in which the government, without question, created a scenario that in no way, shape, or form was necessary at all. That this guy should not have been killed. And that's the very least of it. That's the most generous observation, I would argue. The latest news update. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial, cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. A 50% chance of scattered showers throughout the day, otherwise mostly cloudy, a high near 70. Mostly cloudy, 53 tonight. 70% chance of rain throughout the day tomorrow, a high near 62. Thursday, mostly sunny, 63. How would you like a great home loan? It's easy. I want a greathomeloan.com. That gives you access to the Carricker team, their support. This is not simply your standard mega bank or, even, I've banked here my entire life, where you enter a social security number and what debt do you have, what's your income, and here's what we can do for you. If it's 30 years, it's this. If it's 15 years, it's this. You get so much more than that when it comes to the Carrickers and their team. When I, however far back it was, went through the home loan process, and I want a greathomeloan.com. I've mentioned this before. It was so much more than just what you normally get. They dug deep, and they realized that there was one debt that if I paid just a couple $100s off on it, that was going to raise my credit score to a point that would lower my interest rates, that would save me over time thousands and thousands of dollars. You don't get that everywhere. That's what you get with them, that level of work. I want a greathomeloan.com because you do. Just the News has a piece. Questions swirl around deadly ATF raid on Arkansas home, leaving a local airport administrator dead. Now, one of the reasons I'm bringing this to you is because I do think it's interesting, and these sort of things tend to seem to happen in Arkansas. But as I read through it, I found myself conflicted as to whether or not this was more about, well, this is the sort of thing that you hear about happening in Arkansas, or if it was more about this is increasingly what we see our government doing. Like, I wasn't sure, like, what is the theme of this, or what's the point of this story? Weird corruption, or this is becoming the norm in America? And I think it's the latter of the two. Newly released videos show federal agents arriving to execute a search warrant on the home of the administrator of a local airport in Little Rock, Arkansas. The raid gone wrong in the pre-dawn hours of March 19th ultimately led to the death of the administrator, Brian Malinowski, after a brief standoff with agents. These videos, as well as a search warrant and affidavit previously published, shed light on why an administrator at the Bill and Hillary Clinton National Airport was under investigation by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF. According to the ATF, he was allegedly selling firearms without the proper license, some of which were reportedly used in crimes, and for misrepresenting his purpose on purchase forms. Regardless of the allegations, Brad Cummings, the lawyer representing Malinowski's estate, has concerns about whether the ATF followed proper procedure executing the search, and noted that the ATF has still not released footage from body-worn cameras, BWC, the agents are required to use, possibly violating administration policy established in the wake of major police-involved shootings. Cummings is a former U.S. attorney and one-time chief legal counsel to former Governor Mike Huckabee. The newly released videos show several ATF agents arriving in the early morning of March 19th in 10 separate vehicles. The second video shows agents approaching the front door on the home, where one officer applies what appears to be tape to obscure the doorbell camera on Malinowski's home. The security camera footage released to the media by Cummins on Sunday are the first pieces of footage to emerge from the incident and highlight the fact that no body cam footage has been released by authorities, despite regulations promulgated by the Biden Justice Department in the wake of the high-profile Breonna Taylor case. Quote, "At this stage, there is no publicly available evidence showing whether agents even knocked on the door or announced their presence, adequately identifying themselves. Brian's wife, Mayor, only heard loud banging immediately followed by the crash of the front door being forced open," Cummins said in a statement to the news media. Quote, "Absent exigent circumstances, danger of losing evidence, drugs down the toilet, propensity for violence or escape, case law requires law enforcement officers to give dwelling occupants a reasonable time to come to the door and let them in," he added. According to the press release, the loud noise of the federal agents forcing entry into the home awoke the Malinowskis. Brian Malinowski then reportedly loaded a handgun and confronted the intruders in the dark. It is not currently known who fired first, but after a brief exchange of fire, Malinowski was shot in the head and killed. Quote, "The Malinowski family believes The already known facts amplify or amply demonstrate ATF's tactics on March 19th were reckless and incompetent and completely unnecessary, Cummins said of the incident. In the wake of the shooting of Breonna Taylor in March of 2020, the Biden administration promised reforms to no-knock warrants and body-worn camera policies to avoid any tragic incidents and promote accountability. Reforms to no-knock warrants were distributed by the Justice Department in a memo to federal law enforcement agencies, including the ATF. Building upon a general requirement for agents to knock and announce their identity, authority, and purpose, and demand to enter before any entry is made, the Justice Department ordered its subordinate agencies to limit the use of no-knock entries. One of the changes includes a direction to restrict their use to instances where an agent has reasonable grounds to believe at the time the warrant is sought that knocking and announcing the agent's presence would create an imminent threat of physical violence to the agent and or another person, according to the memo. The Justice Department noted this significantly narrowed scope would need to be followed even in instances where evidence could be destroyed. Attorney Cummins said criminal investigators should determine with precision whether the agents knocked, whether they announced their presence, identity, and purpose, and whether they waited a reasonable amount of time before they breached. The Malinowski home is almost 3,000 square feet. It was 6 a.m. Mr. Malinowski apparently had no idea that he was under law enforcement scrutiny. The jurisdiction for the search involved suspicion of a crime carrying a 0 to 6 month U.S. sentencing guideline range, which typically results in a sentence or probation, or more often probation ending with complete dismissal, he added. The ATF declined to comment and noted the investigation is still active and ongoing. The Arkansas State Police confirmed that it is conducting an investigation into whether or not the use of force was proper under state codes, a spokesman told Just the News yesterday. Cummins also noted the ATF was not released or has not released any body cam footage of the incident despite request from the family. Under ATF regulations for both special agents and local partners, known as special deputies, the agency is expected to conduct an expedited review of the body cam recordings to decide if a public release is appropriate according to policy regulating ATF agents. Quote, there is a presumption ATF will publicly release all TFO body cam recording that depicts an incident resulted in the serious bodily injury or death of another as soon as practical, unless there exists specific and compelling grounds to justify withholding, which cannot be resolved by redaction, partial withholding, or other means. The only other public information about the investigation into Malinowski that led to the search of his home and the shooting comes from a federal affidavit and search warrant. That affidavit contains significant redactions, but indicates that Malinowski was under surveillance by federal officials for what they claimed was a scheme to sell firearms and skirt regulations. According to the affidavit, Malinowski allegedly purchased firearms legally, and when he filled out the purchase forms, indicated that they were for private use. He would then resell the firearms at gun shows using the so-called gun show loophole in federal law that permits a sale without background checks. 21 states and Washington, D.C. have extended the background check requirement beyond federal law to at least some gun sales from unlicensed sellers. In one instance described in the affidavit, Malinowski sold guns to undercover agents on January 27th at a gun show. The undercover agent reported Malinowski was operating as a vendor at the gun show with approximately 2 to 3 tables by himself. The tables that he was operating had a rack with AR-style pistols, 2 containers with various pistols, and several boxes of various types of ammunition. The federal investigation Malinowski investigators say that he violated federal gun laws by operating as a firearms seller without the proper licensing, a federal firearms license, or FFL. According to the U.S. Code, it's unlawful for any person to accept a licensed manufacturer, licensed dealer, to engage in the business of importing, manufacturing, or dealing in firearms, or in the course of such business to ship, transport, or receive any firearms in interstate or foreign commerce. Regardless of the allegations contained in the affidavit, Malinowski and Cummins believe the deadly use of force was probably unjustified given the circumstances. Quote, as part of his hobby of collecting, buying, and selling various items, Brian occasionally set up a table at local gun shows where he mainly displayed guns and coins. In Arkansas, a private seller may legally sell a firearm without holding a federal firearms license and without filling out forms or conducting background checks, his lawyer said in a statement. Mr. Malinowski's family and close friends don't think he had any inkling ATF was concerned about his gun show sales. They are all confident that he would have never jeopardized his career in airport management by knowingly flaunting a regulation pertaining to his weekend hobby. Cummins said even if the government's allegations are true, the evidence contained in the affidavit only suggests he perhaps unknowingly crossed a subjective line which put him in a different class of weekend gun seller and obligated him to buy a $200 FFL license. In a statement released by Cummins, the family said they did not understand the government's decision, which led to a dawn raid on the private home and triggered the use of deadly force. Even if the allegations in the affidavits are true, they don't begin to justify what happened, the statement read, according to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. At worst, Brian Malinowski, a gun owner and gun enthusiast, stood accused of making private firearm sales to a person who may not have been legally entitled to purchase a gun, end quote. So what on the surface here is you've got a guy that otherwise, a normal guy, runs a local airport. This is just on the surface. On the week, he's like a lot of people. You pick up a gun here, you pick up a gun there. Maybe in your mind you have a limit. I only need this many. Or maybe your wife's like, you don't buy anymore. And you're like, well, okay, I want to buy this one, so I'll sell off one. And on the weekends, he sets up these tables at these different, events and sells coins and sells ammo and sells some of these guns. So you can legally purchase firearms as he was doing and then legally selling them. But what the government here is arguing is that, well, he was doing it in a way that required him to have a license. It seems as if this is kind of a gray area. A license that costs $200. That generally speaking, if the person who is accused is convicted, is given parole, and then has the conviction thrown out, but in the most extreme cases, the maximum time they could get is 6 months in jail. With that, they decided to do an early morning raid with 10 ATF vehicles. And what apparently, thus far, or at least potentially appears to be a no-knock raid. And here you are, 6 o'clock in the morning, you hear someone busting into your house. If you are somebody who has taken it upon yourself to own firearms for the purpose of home protection, this is the exact time that you're going to do it. And for doing so, he got shot in the head. Why on earth they would go about it this way, given how insignificant the allegations actually were? It's almost as if, again, it's just a casual observer, either absolute, total, complete incompetence or looking for this sort of outcome. I would think that if you are in a position like this, your goal is going to be to go about it in a manner that is going to result in the least likely, or be least likely to result in firearms being used. To me, it appears as if the decision was made, how can we make it more likely that firearms will be used than not? And on one hand, you can look at the history of Arkansas and say, well, once again, this is Arkansas. Or unfortunately, in this day and age, you can look at it as this is America. Because these stories are becoming increasingly normal. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. I will hit some of your text messages on the Pyramid Roofing Company Talk and Text line coming up regarding the increasingly non-mysterious behavior of the ATF and this shooting that took place during a raid of the home of a local or Little Rock local airport administrator and the increasingly bizarre circumstances of that. A reminder, Friday we do have a breakfast for first responders at Scramblers. That is thanks to Barker's Frame and Collision and Pyramid Roofing and Scramblers. So if you're a first responder, join us this Friday for breakfast. Free breakfast for you, 6 a to 9 a at Scramblers. First alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. A 50% chance of scattered showers throughout the day today, otherwise mostly cloudy, high near 70. Mostly cloudy, 53 tonight. 70% chance of rain throughout the day tomorrow, high near 62, mostly sunny, 63 on Thursday. Following special counsel Hur's report on Biden's handling of classified documents back in February and sharing secret information with a ghostwriter, that was illegal. It, of course, was recommended against pursuing charges, instead portraying Biden as an elderly man with poor memory. House Republicans issued subpoenas for the documents from Hur's investigation. Subpoena includes requests for President Biden's recorded interview with her. But the Department of Justice just obstructing justice. They're saying no, we don't think so. Of course they are. Why would they not? The rules do not apply to them. The Department of Justice is the sword and shield of the Biden administration. They act as a shield to shield Biden from any sort of accountability and a sword to go after political opposition. The Department of Justice has now twice refused to comply with the subpoena for the audio recordings, potentially subjecting Attorney General Merrick Garland to contempt of Congress. We won't care. It won't make any difference to him whatsoever. The symbolism is irrelevant to him. You know, being held in contempt of Congress would only matter to somebody who had any sort of reverence for Congress, for the balance of power, was an honest or ethical individual. This would be a stain. I believe that you have people that are as corrupt as Garland, and it is a badge of honor to those individuals. Because they showed that they could obstruct justice and come out the victor. They're proud of it. It's like the smug son of the sheriff in a small town. You see this portrayed sometimes, where he's also on the football team and he can do whatever he wants and he lets everyone know it. My dad's the sheriff. That's what Garland is. That's what all these Democrats are. So I can do what I want. Oh, you're going to subpoena me? Meanwhile, Democrats put Republicans in jail for defying subpoenas. Put them in jail. But if you're a Democrat and you say, oh, well, different rules. And there are stories increasingly that you've got House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, Jim Jordan, they're threatening contempt charges and they're angry and they're upset. To some degree, this monster has been created because Democrats have been allowed over and over and over and over again to get away with these things. And they know that they're going to get away with these things. You had Eric Holder, who defied subpoenas when it came to Fast and Furious. He was held in contempt. They had essentially a party on the White House lawn the day after. I mean, it was their way of showboating a bit. Oh, okay. Guess what? All right, I'm in contempt, but you still don't have the evidence that you subpoenaed. So how about them apples? Same thing with Garland as Attorney General. Oh, okay. Well, he'll be held in contempt. You're going to jail him? Going to have him arrested? You're going to use your power? If that power exists, I mean, one of two things is occurring here. Garland either knows that Congress does not have any power to actually do anything to him that is meaningful, or if they do have the authority to do something meaningful in terms of holding him accountable, he knows that they won't. They won't do it. It is fascinating to watch Republicans almost mockingly observe Democrats in terms of their attempt to deal with crime and this inability for Democrats to either understand or unwillingness to understand that when you are soft on crime, then crime grows. When criminals recognize that they're not going to be held accountable for crimes, then you have those criminals commit more crimes, and you get additional criminals as well because they're like, hey, why not? We watch this occur in the inner cities all the time. And we say, how can you be so foolish? How do you not understand this? Yet Republicans seem to have the same blinders on when it comes to the Democrats' corruption. Oh, well, you've got to comply with this. Why would they? When Republicans demand that Democrats comply with a subpoena, it, to me, is no different than when Kathy Hochul of New York City stands up and starts, wagging her fingers, telling criminals that you better shape up, otherwise we're going to come down on you. Oh, okay. I'm sure that's going to work. Unethical, immoral, and criminal behavior does not stop with empty threats, whether that is a criminal on the streets of New York or a criminal occupying the Department of Justice. And that isn't to say that there aren't Republicans that do genuinely want to do whatever is necessary in order to hold these people accountable. But this is a culture that has been created over a very long period of time. I mean, this definitely, without question, was very profound during the Obama years when you had, again, Eric Holder, just like, all right, whatever. Lois Lerner perjuring herself before Congress. She was never held accountable. Is it Brennan or Clapper? One of the two perjured themselves before Congress. And they're always allowed to come back once they are caught perjuring themselves. They're allowed to come back and restate their testimony. Wouldn't that be nice? Would that be nice if those rules applied to you and me? We testify in court under oath. We get caught perjuring ourselves. We're just allowed to come back and have a do-over. See, we don't get that. We're not afforded that level of justice. That's only people of a particular political persuasion, that being the Democrat Party. And they know it. And they behave to demonstrate that they know it. In the same vein, the Democrats are floating the idea of just ignoring, just not even holding a trial for Mayorkas. Despite the unconstitutional aspect of this, there were articles of impeachment. So then what happens? There's a trial in the Senate. Daily Caller has a story. We're going to take a break and then update you on it, in which Chuck Schumer's thinking about, I don't know, Constitution, whatever. See, they're really learning here. We can do what we want, and we don't have to do what we don't want. Rules do not apply. Oh, but Donald Trump is the dictator, of course. This is what we're told. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Well, hail season, it is among us, and a lot of you in Buffalo, Bolivar, and north of those areas, they have already experienced hail damage, so that is why it is important to know the name of a good roofing company if and when you do need one, and that's why I want to tell you about Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, I have a lot of reasons why I recommend the Pyramid team. I've actually used them. They did fantastic work, but the big thing for me is the Pyramid team. They are not going to try to use scare tactics or take advantage of you because a storm has moved through your area. That's not how they work. Whenever you call Josh and his team, they'll come out, they'll do a thorough roof inspection, they'll take photos and videos so you can exactly see what's going on with your roof, and then they come up with a plan that best fits you, your budget, and your roof. So this spring, if a storm hits and it is time to schedule that roof inspection, call Josh and his team. You can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Never been done before. Legal experts, GOP senators attack possible attempt to avoid Mayorkas impeachment trial. I guess to some degree, when it comes to honesty, ethics, morality, there's absolutely no reason to have any sort of respect for the Democrat Party. But when it comes to just sort of like, whatever, we're going to do what we want, you got to give them a little respect. Senate Republicans and legal scholars say that a possible Democrat maneuver to avoid an impeachment trial of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas lacks precedent and would be unconstitutional. So, okay. The House of Representatives impeached Mayorkas February on 2 articles for a willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law and a breach of public trust following their criticism of him for the influx of foreign nationals. I mean, we all know the reason behind this. Lindsey Graham, South Carolina, ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said, "I think it's never been done before in the history of our nation, and we are going to vigorously oppose it. I think it's unconstitutional." Again, do you think that the Democrats care? Andrew McCarthy, senior fellow at the National Review Institute and Fox News legal contributor, told DCNF the right thing to do would be to refer to the Judiciary Committee to conduct a trial and make a report to the full Senate. They've calculated, this is the key to it right here, they've calculated it is better to take heat for refusing to hold a trial than to allow House Republican impeachment managers and Senate Republicans in the Judiciary Committee make a public record on Biden administration border policy in the high-profile context of an impeachment trial against a Biden cabinet member. So what he's saying here, and it's true, like most things, everything is calculated through the lens of the election. Everything that they are using the courts to do when it comes to Trump and trying to imprison him, that's all about the election. Here you have the requirement of the Senate to take up this hearing because of the articles of impeachment that were passed. But they're like, okay, well, what if we don't? What's going to harm us less? Our blatant disregard for the law and the Constitution, or further exposure of our policies at the border? And the calculated move that McCarthy here is noting, and I agree, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, is that they've decided that it will be less damaging to be seen as violating the law and the Constitution than it would be for the American people to see and further exposure of what's been going on at the border. And the reasons behind it. Because right now, even though the Biden administration is losing tremendously when it comes to this issue, they recognize that most Americans still don't know to what extent it's deliberate. They recognize that a lot of Americans think either, well, there's just nothing he can do about it, it's out of control. Maybe some blame Congress. They think it's just the standard sort of gridlock between Republicans and Democrats that's causing this to occur. Some may believe that, again, it's just incompetence. But what they recognize is that there's still a segment of the population that they don't realize all of this is very deliberate. And the fear that the Democrats have is if they hold the trial, as they are required to do, there are going to be people who are already upset at what's going on, or some that, again, maybe they're upset, but they don't know who to blame, and then they're going to find out for the first time or hear the evidence and the proof that this is all deliberate. This is not an accident. What the Democrats are also banking on is, of course, the media will cover for them, and that Republicans will bitch about it a little bit. Say, well, this is unprecedented, and then it'll go away. Well, nothing we can do. Got to move on. What Republicans need to do is not open their mouth without the word cover-up coming out of it. This is a cover-up. And I would go so far, I wouldn't portray this as cover-up because we know what's going on and they don't want you to know. I would portray it as we don't even know what they're covering up. Like, what is it that they are trying to hide from us? This is why we need to do this. What is it that they are so desperate to hide? And I would hammer away, because once again, what they are banking on is the common place Republican reaction whenever the Democrats kind of slap them and say, oh, and then they run away. Like, nope, we're not going to do it. Well, that's bad. You can't do that. Okay, what's the next order of business? And then it'll be a dead issue because that's what they want. They want this to go away. I would not let it. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Ocasio-Cortez, Biden's loan plan gives beneficiaries hope they can travel abroad. Well, look at that. We have shifted from the need of the Biden administration to defy the findings of the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's irrelevant now. To transfer, not forgive, to transfer the financial commitment made by all of these people to other people. We were told it's because it's just, they'll be broken financially otherwise. They can't afford it. Apparently they do have money. Here you have Ocasio-Cortez now, instead of paying off their student loans, they can go travel, they can backpack through Europe, they can, just go live life, have a great time. Well, thank goodness. So while the rest of us are going to work so that we can pay off their student loans, that burden that we have lifted from them will allow them to go and just enjoy life while traveling abroad. Isn't that wonderful? How very compassionate of the Biden administration. Well worth the violation of law. There's an exchange that is going around a bit between Joe Rogan and someone else. I don't know the name of the someone else. And I was actually watching the exchange earlier this morning, and I hadn't planned on mentioning it, but then I decided to. But I didn't print it off, so I don't have it in front of me. But it had to do with what is going on in Israel. And Joe Rogan in the exchange, and it's an edited exchange that is floating around just for time consumption's sake. But he references the 30,000 civilians in Gaza who have been killed, and that the numbers suggest that it's getting close to a genocide. And the individual that was opposite him politely disagreed and explained why. Very calm, straightforward. Not calm as in condescending, but just very, very calm. He said, well, number one, that number, even Hamas does not say those are civilian numbers. They do not differentiate between civilians and terrorists. So when they're saying 30,000, even if you want to accept those numbers as accurate, he explains to Joe Rogan, you're not talking about 30,000 civilians. To which Joe Rogan does something that, and my point of this is Joe Rogan is more of a journalist than 99% of actual journalists are, and he's not a journalist. So you know what Joe Rogan did? He asked a completely legitimate question. Well, do we know what the breakdown is? And the person explaining the details of this to him said, well, the Israelis, they say that about, and he was giving some numbers. He's like 19,000 of them, he believed, were actual Hamas terrorists. The rest are civilians. He said, if you want to believe those numbers, he said, you know, these numbers could be inflated on both sides in order to make the sides look good. We don't know. He went on to note that the ratio of civilians to non-civilians that have been killed is a ratio that is a much greater ratio in terms of killing the bad guys than we as a country have had when we were going after ISIS. That there hasn't really ever been any country that has been as successful in keeping the civilian casualties down. The conversation goes on a bit, and then in the end, Joe Rogan says something along the lines of, well, you've given me a lot to think about. You clearly know a lot more about this than I do. That's how conversations are supposed to work. And that's why somebody like Joe Rogan that gets railed on by the media in this country is more of a journalist in terms of what a journalist is supposed to be than most journalists actually are in this country. Asking questions to learn. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.